Thank you. Oh.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're recording. Are recording. To start, I need a motion for someone to read the public input statement instead of me. Somebody like to do it?
I will. I make a motion that Kate reads the public input statement.
Second.
All those in favor? There you go.
Good evening. The first public input session is a 21-minute session with each person having no longer than 3 minutes in which to make a statement. But a second public input session may be held at the end of the meeting if allowed by the board chair. Each speaker will give his or her name, their address, and their reason for speaking. Public input is designated for district residents, but the board chair may grant non-residents the opportunity to address the board. Statements concerning subject matter that falls under the law regarding executive sessions, for example, matters involving personnel, cannot be made during public input. We as a community pledge to treat each other as we would wish to be treated. We pledge to seek understanding when there may be disagreement, and regardless of outcomes or opinions, we pledge to move forward with respect. This is a time for comments or questions for the board, but please be aware that questions may not be able to be answered at this meeting.
Do we have any public input tonight? Would like to step up? Okay. Moving on to celebrations.
Okay. We do have a student from Noble Middle School here, and Principal Archambault is going to make the introduction.
Good evening. My name is Mike Larson, the principal of Noble Middle School. Noble Middle School had 3 staff members who we trained and mentored some young scientists and engineers to go up to the Maine State Middle School Science Fair. This is the 3rd year of this middle school science fair. 50 students participated from 7 schools. It's the first year that Noble Middle School participated. We had 17 students participate, which is the largest number of students from any school. Each student prepares a tabletop display to showcase their work, and multiple judges score each project, with a large part of the score being the interviews with the students regarding the details of the product of their project. Okay, notes did something. Okay. 6 categories, so each student competes with other projects in their category. There are special awards that a project from any category can win. I'd like to introduce Austin Heiser, a 7th grader at Noble Middle School. He won 2nd place in the physical sciences category and a special award for civil and environmental engineering, which was sponsored by the University of Maine.
Oh, wow.
Okay, hello. My name is Austin Heiser, and I participated in that science fair. So, let's see here. It probably happened, I'll say 1 month ago. I mean, time like sort of blends together at the end of the school year, so.
I agree.
So basically, what we did was, how I started was kind of interesting. My tech teacher, Mr. Pete, came up to me and said, "You like to build things, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "You want to do a science fair?" And I was like, "Sure." There was another student who sort of started like half their project. I mean, not really, they just like got the idea down and then decided not to do it. So Mr. P got me, and I decided to basically pick up the project. My project was on how temperature variance affects thermoelectric generators, which is a lot simpler than it sounds. I mean, the whole experiment was just a cup of hot water, a cup of cold water, then you put a little machine into it, and then the cup of the hot water warms up a metal plate on one side, and the cold water cools down the other plate on the other side, and it causes an electrical current, makes just a little fan go. So basically what we did was we measured the temperature on each cup of water and then measured the voltage disputed by the machine. We wrote it down all on a graph, made a chart, boom, we go to the science fair, which is up around Augusta. It's probably a 2-hour drive, I want to say. And we go there, set up our tables, things. And the judges go around judging us. I think it was a really good experience for me because I always first off, thank you for this opportunity. I'm glad to be here and speak with you guys. So multiple judges come across and they just ask, what is your presentation? What did you do it on? Explain a little bit of this. And I really liked mine because one of the reasons was that it's a thermoelectric generator, which runs off of just heated water, which could possibly be used as a means of clean energy, which I think is something that we should always be looking for. Which I think might have been something that placed it in for these special awards, is like the environmental awards. So yeah, that's what I did. Any questions?
Are you able to do it again next year? Is this something that you can do annually? Is this a one year kind of deal?
Yes, I do believe I can do it in the high school, and if so, then I would like to do it. Because in the beginning, I was sort of like, I don't really know if I wanted to do it. I wasn't really that into it, but I ended up doing it, and I really liked it. I got second place and $250. So
That's amazing.
And what's the next level? Like, is there another level to what you did as far as thermoelectric generation that you'd like to investigate?
another level?
Yeah, is there something beyond it, or would you have to do something completely different?
I don't really know. I think it's definitely possible for me to learn more about thermoelectric generators. So next year, for example, if I were to do the science fair, I'd probably do something on clean energy, something that interests me.
Cool.
Any other questions?
What was your voltage?
Let's see if I remember. So it didn't dispute that much because we weren't able to get the water extremely hot. I mean, we had to use like a coffee maker basically.
Okay.
So if I remember correctly, the temperature variance, which is around like 40 degrees, I want to say Fahrenheit. And the most disputed was only like 1.4 volts, if I remember correctly, which I probably don't.
Okay, that's why you have a graph, right?
Yep.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
One more thing to note. Well, there's a lot going on, as you know, at the high school. So the senior ball was last night. Everything went really well for that. They're finishing up convocation right now, and then tomorrow night is graduation. Graduation practice on Wednesday went very well. We always have the full practice. We're hoping for outdoors, and we're banking on that. So we'll see how that goes. And then earlier this month, one of our fifth grade teachers, Kevin Laranger at Lebanon Elementary School, was recognized as Crumble Cookies. I don't know if you know Crumble Cookies, their main teacher of the year. So two representatives from the headquarters in Utah flew in and to present him with the award of $1,000 and also some cookies. There were 100 teachers nominated in the state of Maine, and there were 60,000 teachers nominated across the country. So one from every state was chosen, one teacher from every state. And this was done on the actual day of teacher appreciation. They had everybody at the headquarters kind of go out and do that for that. So that was really exciting. Very nice.
Very cool.
Just wanted to share that as well. Yes, thanks.
Okay, next we're moving to our audit. Exciting things.
Gonna say, I don't know how to follow that.
Any cookies?
I'll run and get some peppermint patties. I think that's as good as I can get.
Okay, so every year we are required to have an annual audit performed. And Jen Connors, our audit firm for KO, is here to present the results of the fiscal 23, so ending June 30, 22. There's a handout,
Going around.
and these are the talking points for them. And if anybody
Thank
wanted another audit book
Thank
to
you.
look at, I have them, but this is gonna be the highlights. Okay, so you're good to do?
Yes.
All right, thanks for having me. I'm here to talk about the results of the fiscal year 2023 audit. This is just a brief overview of the audit itself. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to jump in at any point. So I'm just going to get right into it. On the second slide here, we have the timing of the audit. This is just to kind of give you an overview of the audit process itself. So we were here to do some pre-audit work on July 10th and 12th of 2023. At that time, we usually gather information to the audit, do some of our tests, polls and testing. And then we came back the week of December 11th, which is a little later than when we normally have the audit. So that, of course, did kind of push back the timeline of completing the audit itself. We had drafts of the reports on April 2nd, and then the final reports were dated. So we are, of course, meeting a little bit later than. On page 3, I have a summary of the audit results. So for the statements themselves, they did have an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion on the financial statements. And then besides the financial statements, as part of the audit, we also issue a report required by government auditing standards. Under those standards, we are required to consider internal controls as they relate to financial reporting, and test some of those controls. And under those requirements, there were no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies. Material weakness is a level of finding where it is basically systemic and something that you really want to be concerned about. A significant deficiency would be a step down from that, not necessarily systemic, but still of concern. We did have a couple of minor recommendations, but overall, very clean audit. And then because the school district receives and spends over $750,000 in federal grants, it is required to undergo what's called a single audit of the uniform guidance. And under those requirements, we as the auditors come in and test some of your larger federal grants. Under those requirements, we tested the Education Stabilization Funds, also known as ESSER or ESSER, the Special Education Cluster, Local Entitlement Program, and the Child Nutrition Cluster, which is the school lunch program. And under those requirements, we did not have any compliance findings, and there were also no findings for internal controls for compliance. So again, very clean audit. The rest of these graphs are an overview of the financial statements themselves. Most of these focus on the general fund of the school district because it is your large fund on your financial statements. And on page 4, we have an overview of the general fund balance. This is the fund balance broken down into its different categories over the last 5 fiscal years. So you can see there are basically 3 parts to your fund balance. The first is the non-spendable category, and that is a portion of your fund balance that is not readily available to be used. That is typically made up of inventory or prepaid expenditures. The next category would be assigned fund balance, and that is an amount that is internally designated for a specific purpose. In this case, in 2023, you had amounts that were assigned to be used in the next fiscal year. So in fiscal year 2024. And then finally, you have unassigned fund balance, which is basically what is left over after you've put amounts into those other categories. Your total fund balance actually decreased by $817,000 from fiscal year 2022 to just under $4 million. And total fund balance, as you can see, it peaked in 2021 and has steadily declined since then. Over the past 5 fiscal years, it has increased by a net $1.9 million. And then on page 5, we have another graph. Because we don't get to talk about fund balance so much. This is looking specifically at unassigned fund balance over the last 5 fiscal years. And this is as a percentage of budget. That can kind of be a good gauge as far as how healthy your unassigned fund balance is. So your unassigned fund balance is your portion of fund balance that carries forward to be used for whatever purpose you need it for. As you can see, it started off at a low in 2019 of 3.9%, and in 2023, it is at about 6.5%. Now, the state of Maine does allow you to carry forward what they call undesignated fund balance of 9%. So you're definitely under that threshold. However, that threshold is supposed to drop back down to 5%. So it is something to keep in mind that you may have to whittle that down a little bit more. If you do exceed the state's threshold, you do have 3 years to actually come up with a plan to spend down that excess fund balance.
When does that,
I'm sorry,
when does that drop down to 5% again?
I believe that's 2025.
I think it's 25 or 26.
Yeah,
I think it's
double
20.
check that.
I'm pretty sure it's actually 26. I think 25 is the last year of 9%.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So you have a couple of years still.
So just to be clear, so by then we need to spend that down.
Right, so that's, we went through the budget process, we were looking at how much money we're allocating from this to use for fund balance.
Right.
So we are continually bringing it down.
Okay.
It could be that our, depending on how the year goes, do we underspend and therefore we don't have to use as much as we budgeted? That's generally what's happening because we're constantly estimating. If you look in your budget books, I think we were trying to get down to like 700,000. I forget the exact number right now, but we always shoot to get between 700 and $1 million anyway. But again, once the year closes, we see if we've used everything budgeted.
Right.
So that's where the fluctuations come.
Yeah, and I do want to point out also that, as I mentioned, your total fund balance did decrease, but your actual unassigned fund balance actually increased. And that's because your assigned fund balance decreased. So there's always a play between those categories as well, how much you've budgeted to use going forward. On page 6 and 7, these are the budget to actual variances for the general fund. So this kind of gives you an explanation as to why your total fund balance decreased. So on page 6 are the revenues, budget to actual. The intergovernmental revenues actually came in under budget by about $121,000. And that is because state education subsidy came in lower than anticipated because of changes in the state's budget. Interest earned actually offset that decrease and was $116,000 higher than budget. And that had to do with improved interest rates. In total, revenues were about $4,700 under budget, which is 0.01%, which is really close. And then on page 7, we have the same. Some of the variances. Regular instruction was under budget due to staff leaving or retiring and one unfilled position. Special education was under budget by about $323,000, and that had to do with unfilled positions and staff leaving during the year. Student and staff support was also under budget. That had to do with a literacy and math coach budgeted in the general fund that was paid out of the ESSER funds. System administration was also under budget by about $51,000, and then transportation was under budget by about $391,000. That had to do with unfilled positions as well as fewer bus runs for sporting events. And then in total, expenditures were about $1.3 million under budget. Now, it sounds like you had a savings there, but your revenues were still lower. The revenues were, 43 million, expenditures were 44, so that created the total decrease in your fund balance. The last two graphs that I have are some of the other funds that you have. As I mentioned, we do usually focus on the general fund because it is the largest, the most important fund. However, if you do look at the financial statements, there are also other funds that are disclosed in the reports. So for example, you have two other major funds, which means that they are large enough to be presented by themselves on the financial statements. One is the school grant fund, and those balances are restricted for specific programs. Most of your federal and state grants are on a reimbursement basis, so they tend to have zero balances. So these balances are mostly your local grants and donations. The capital projects fund went from a $96,000 balance to about $3.3 million. And that is because in 2023, you issued debt of 8.9 million, which was offset by capital spending of 5.8 million. And then those amounts are committed for ongoing projects and asset purchases.
Can you rephrase that for me, please? I don't understand that last part where you said.
Committed for future asset purchases and projects.
Okay. So this is some big project that was in the plans and that money is allocated for it?
HVAC bond of 8.3 million, I believe, and the in-process amount was 4 or 5 million. So that's remaining is toward those.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
On page 9, that's for the other funds. Well, so you have an adult education special revenue fund, an adult education enrichment special revenue fund, excuse me. School lunch fund, which is a special revenue fund, Hussey Theater, International Student Program, and student activity funds, which are all classified as special revenue funds. These all stayed relatively the same, except for the school lunch fund, which actually increased by about $520,000. And that is due to ongoing state subsidy for that program. And that is it for what I have. Does anyone have anything to add?
Student activity funds, is that the thing for participation in extracurriculars? Like, what is that?
No, the student activity funds are the small technical that you pulled in.
All the different clubs? That's
Yes.
the, got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
related.
So were there any recommendations we should change or just minor things or?
Yeah, we do have a couple of minor comments, which I can go over. One of them had to do with some disbursements that we tested for the local entitlement program. Specifically, there were some reimbursements to individuals that also reimbursed sales tax on their purchases, which, you know, normally we don't care that much if it's a small dollar amount, but there was one purchase that had sales tax that exceeded $27, which seemed kind of high, especially where it was charged to a grant. So we recommend that the district discourage people from making those purchases individually and perhaps going to the central office instead so they can avoid paying sales tax to begin with.
I would also add, so what we've done is we do encourage, if there are instances where programs sometimes need last minute materials, they need to go to Hannaford to buy supplies for their life skills class, whatever it is. But we are making sure now that our federal grants do not reimburse for sales tax. We've changed how we're processing those. And we are taking under advisement potentially not reimbursing sales tax and really strongly. Again, we always encourage people to use our Amazon accounts, our Office Depot accounts, things that are the district. We have with Hannaford tax-free cards that people can borrow, things like that. But it's, you know, we don't restrict people from doing it on their own at this point. So it's something we're looking at and trying to see maybe what the real effect is. But we, as far as the federal grant portion, we now have changed our process, so we no longer reimburse sales tax under federal grant.
The other comment that we had, we did some testing of cash receipts for the Hussey School, and
of the sample of 5 deposits that we selected for testing, 4 were not deposited in a timely manner. They were actually deposited between 20 and 90 days after they were originally received. What we usually do is we'll select so many deposits and then we'll get the supporting documentation. And then a lot of times the supporting documentation is dated so we can tell approximately when it was received. So our recommendation is just that the district reinforce to the schools that they do need to be depositing that money in a timely manner. Really shouldn't be held on hand at the schools, especially for that long. So,
And we do have, everything is locked and secure. But, it's always good to have a gentle reminder for all schools about the timeliness of deposits and things like that. So when we get things like this, it's a good opportunity for me to go around again and just make sure everybody's aware of what the expectation is. So we look at it as a positive way to improve.
yep. As I mentioned, these are minor comments. They're not in the grand scheme of things. So overall, very, very clean audit. If this is all I have, then you're doing well.
Definitely.
Jennifer, credit to you and your team, Denise.
Yeah, I will tell you, the central office is the key to this whole thing. This is not a one-person job. My staff, particularly Kathy Vancore, Mary Ellen Bourbon, they jump through hoops and they do a great job. So I appreciate that.
Big budget to manage. Nicely done. Yeah,
Thank you.
those are pretty small.
And kudos to you, Denise.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we have a budget update.
Okay, this document that's going out, we'll just review this. These have some dates on them.
Take one and pass them down.
Take one and pass it. Let's see.
Oh, we have to come and sign everything and.
Well, we'll go through that. So, so the vote is on Tuesday, the 11th. We do need to have a meeting on the 13th to sign documents. And then these dates, I just wanted to bring attention to this because if the budget does not pass, we just kind of want to go through the timeline for what that could look like. So we would still have a meeting on June 13th. And at that time, we would likely have some documents that we need to address, that would be coming from the lawyers, for the purposes of the fact that it did not pass. From there, we have scheduled the rest of that day. We would propose to schedule the rest of that time as a budget work session to talk about next steps, what we need to do. And that would bring us to June 20th, the following Thursday, which would be a budget work session. And then June 27th, so these are proposed dates. And we do have to work with the lawyers to make sure that we're in compliance of a timeline. They've given us a timeline, but we just need to make absolutely certain we're following that timeline correctly. So that would be June 27th would be the call of the meeting and the signing of the new warrants. July 11th would be the budget hearing. And then August 6th would be the budget referendum vote. And that is a Tuesday. Right.
There is a movement.
I'm sure there is.
Uh,
So if it
Something
passes, we'll still have the meeting on the 13th,
Yeah.
but just signing and that's.
And is that it for the summer unless we have to call a special meeting or?
We typically do have a July meeting and an August meeting, and we'll talk about that we can talk about that under the update. Just want to make sure though, we do need to make sure that we are here. So that's why I kind of want to go through these dates to see that we have a quorum.
I will not be in the state on the 20th. I'll be getting my daughters, so.
Okay,
that's a
so
big-
June 20th. Okay,
So, yeah, that whole week I'll be out of state.
okay.
I am not in town on the 27th, June 27th.
So Audra, the fiscal year ends on the last of June.
June 30th.
What then is our budget guidance after our
Yes.
current budget
Yes.
expires?
So that's a good question. So if it does not pass,
Revert.
We don't revert back to we don't revert.
We don't. Okay.
We received clarification on this.
Okay.
We move ahead with the proposed budget until there's a vote.
Okay.
So that is different than the information that we've had previously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
That's actually a relief.
that's totally different than it used to be.
and there are like I said, there are timelines. We have to have the call to the meeting within a certain time and then the warrants and everything like we do in the whole process.
Summer.
Yes.
And everybody's gonna be.
Right. Yes. I guess we're looking at July 11th. How does that,
That would be like the big auditorium.
the auditorium, the budget? So Lauren, would you be available, do you think, right now? Okay, Peg, are you?
Yeah, it could be.
Okay,
I'll see if I can move some things. Right now I'm not.
if need be. Okay. I'll put you as a question mark. Okay. Nancy, might you?
Yeah, I should be.
Okay. Okay.
Travis is, it'll be the new
Jerry.
person.
Yeah, I don't have a conflict with any of these.
Okay.
At this,
great.
at this
Yes.
moment.
Okay. Thank you, Victoria. You,
I don't have a conflict at this
okay.
I can be for July.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So we're
We're gonna hope that we're gonna just
Right.
pass the.
okay. And the other, the other budget update is we do have that $325,000 that was, those two amendments that were put back in. And we can talk about that on the 13th, but we really need to see what happens with Tuesday before we move to talk through some of that. So those are just the updates.
Can I
Yes.
ask you, because I didn't get this, when we had the budget meeting, how we went from 7.4 to 8.9 with 325,000 being added on a $49 million budget. That seemed a little excessive. I don't know how those numbers work together.
Yeah, it was really, I took the same formula we did to get the 7.48.
Mhm.
And when I added 325,000 to our expenses, that's the number that it calculated to. It was higher, let me see if I have.
The convocation's done.
Yeah, I think so too. I can shut that door.
So, the fiscal 24 expenses were 45,237,883. When we take the original 49,001,797 and we add the 325,000, that brings us to a 9.04% increase of expenses. And then, after we deduct all of the revenues, we anticipate the state subsidy using fund balance, interest, student tuitions, all of those things. We come down to, of that 49,326,797, we have, funding of 24,571,237, which leaves for local taxes 24,755,560. And when you deduct what they paid last year, in fiscal 24, that's an 8.94% increase. And then when you factor in some additional receipts for adult education, the overall, everything the towns are paying to us goes down to 8.9. So it's how the formula calculates. So I'm not sure. I don't know, how to further answer your question, I guess.
I think that was very helpful because it's as I understand it, and so I'm reflecting back, it's an 8.9% increase over what the towns paid
Not the
last
total
year.
budget, I think.
Not the entire budget because
So
that's
the school budget, right, is going up 9.04%
Right.
expenses.
right.
And the revenues we have to offset it brings it down to 8.94
Yeah.
over last year.
That makes
And then, again, there's a little bit more for adult education, which brings it down another scope.
Yeah.
Any other budget nuggets?
Yes, I just wanted to report that Sue and I on Tuesday evening went to the Berwick Select Board. They were unable to meet with us for that joint meeting, so we presented kind of a high level process with them and very informative for them. They asked some good questions and they were very positive about the school district. So that's a good thing. The big topic of the evening was the public garden.
Yeah.
So that was a discussion, but so it was nice to be there to hear some of that. So, yeah. Cool.
Okay, yes, moving on to minutes of May 23rd. Any corrections?
And until I got
Let's
here,
go
so I went through as
through
fast as I could. My only question that just jumped off of the whole thing is the final count at the bottom, which reflects the written count,
Yep.
is not the same as the,
Hand counts, no.
okay,
And to be,
because a lot of people left.
and just to be fair, like I did my best on the hand count.
I think a lot of people left, was looking at it and everything, but I was like, wait a minute, how'd we go? from
Actual-
291 people to 218, like.
Right, the actual counts go by the written ballot.
Making sure, because I feel like someone's gonna look at that and be like, oh, that doesn't add up.
Since the town clerks are there, can't they count the towns?
They can, to be honest, Jerry, we've never had to do that.
Yeah, there's not,
The hand counts, never had to do that before.
right, because there's never that many people.
Obviously, yes, obviously,
Yeah.
no.
It's usually just sort of this, like you look up, the moderator looks up and goes, yeah, that's definitely more or less. So it's got very, it got a lot more specific. So, yeah, so next year I will do that actually, because it would have been helpful. to
Yeah.
Have other eyes on.
Josh, this is a general question. When in the minutes, the difference between an overwhelming pass and a pass, I just didn't know if you could quantify those two
I
differences.
honestly, was there any dissension pretty much? There was a few, like, as opposed to, not any dissension, but some, I guess, again, it's a judgment, like,
There were a lot unanimous.
yeah.
Yeah, there were like, I had no sound of like one raised their hand or like.
There was a few people, I don't think there was ever one that,
When you-
in even the 0-1, somebody put their hand up, like just for, I think it was
The
for,
food one, I thought was like shoo-in.
I think it was just I think it was more of a funny than it was anything.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was the
Mhm.
the debt service one. I think somebody just raised their hand up and because they were laughing, but so that's really the, yeah. And, you know, if you have a question about it, I'm absolutely fine to say it passed or it didn't pass. I'm okay with that. I can change that.
Otherwise, barring any
Anything else?
speed reading, I would say I make a motion to approve the May 23rd minutes.
A second.
Okay, second. Okay, all those in favor? We have any abstention? We're all here, right? And then we go to May 30th.
Which was a pretty.
Yeah,
Short and
motion to
sweet.
pass.
I-
It was.
Let me get there. Okay. Long one.
Peg, motion to,
Any
a motion to
problems?
pass, and a second, yeah.
Again.
Second down there, anybody in favor?
Oh,
Everybody's in favor. Abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay, one abstention.
I abstain.
And Mr. Okay, I'm sorry.
Lauren.
Lauren, it was Lauren,
Lauren and-
Lauren and Peg again. Okay, thank you. Abstention. Thank you.
Okay, Superintendent Summer Hire.
Okay, so we've,
Oh, no, that's the last one. Never mind, just kidding. Sorry.
oh, this has been on the agenda a couple of summers now, probably maybe 5, I would say, going into the summer. Historically, in the past, when there's less frequent meetings in the summer, we've lost potential candidates because there's not the formal approved by the board. So what we ask for is that we are able to extend contracts out, but we bring their names still forward to you when we have the meeting, like in July and when we have the meeting in August. So you have that information, but it won't hold us up, I guess is the point. So we put down the date June 14th to August 28th. Hopefully everybody will be hired well in advance of August 28th.
Yeah.
So,
On a motion?
yes, please.
Motion to.
But wait, I have a question.
Motion, is it a motion first, second, then we'll.
Oh,
discuss.
okay, sorry.
I'll second.
Now we can.
A question?
Now I can have my, okay. So will we have that information, the teacher information before? I mean, I know you don't want to delay, so you don't want to lose the candidates, but will we get that information as it comes? As you're ready to like proposal, offer them the job?
We can do that. Historically, what has happened is that it comes to the board meeting in July. So whatever happens between June 14th and the July meeting, we would act on that, and then you would receive the packet with your information, with your agenda. So it wouldn't be done necessarily like we had an interview on Wednesday, we email the board, and then on Thursday or Friday, we offer. It would be just at that time for the meetings.
So we would be voting for somebody who you already hired, technically.
So would you be, that's what this motion is.
Yep. Yeah. It's giving the authority to the superintendent to do that.
And as it comes to, like seniority of time, is it a time as to when you say they're hired or when they're approved by the school board? Like, how does that work when it comes to seniority? What date goes in
Oh, it starts on
September
the,
1st.
yeah, it's September 1st.
regardless of when they're approved?
Because their contracts don't start till then.
Any other questions?
I mean, just general feelings, I'll just state it out publicly. I mean, this is why you're in the position that you're in. You know, you are to hire staff and ensure that they're evaluated and ensure that students are getting the very best. So I don't have a problem supporting you because that's your role.
Other than administrators and the.
Right.
That's different.
That's, yeah. Any other questions before we vote? Okay, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, employment.
Right, so we have a leave of absence for Jamie Frazier. She's the Noble Middle School choral director and she is requesting family medical leave. She's going to, her due date is coming up in October, so she's going to extend that out. So
moved.
Second, to do these individually, right?
yes, we do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Second, Lauren, all those in favor? Okay,
The next one is Kelsey Thompson, very similar timeline for Kelsey, like within a couple days. So similarly, she wants to extend her family medical leave time for her due date.
So moved. Second.
like these two down here.
Yep, got it. I like it.
All those in favor? Okay.
And then we have some new hires. What I would like to say is because I know that the board has worked really hard with teacher negotiations over the last couple negotiation cycles. Every top candidate that we've had has accepted.
That's awesome.
So,
It hasn't always been that way.
It hasn't.
No,
always been
it
that way.
hasn't. That's,
This is a
excellent.
focus for the board, so.
that's great.
We have, so Shay Kelly, for Vivian Huzzy School, third grade. She received her master's degree at Lesley University. And she's coming from student teaching at Brookwood School in Manchester, Massachusetts. And these do all need to be individual as well. So,
All right, so moved.
Second. Okay, all those in favor?
and then Adrienne Smith, third grade. She's currently teaching in Japan and they are flying back home, tomorrow. So, she's been on the Department of Defense, a school for the Department of Defense. She, prior to that, she was teaching in, Florida. So she's taught first grade, kindergarten, third grade. So.
Excellent.
A lot of cultural, things. Yes, yes.
So moved.
And where is she going to be teaching?
Huzzy School.
Same,
Yes.
third grade also?
Yes.
Great.
So when I
We
interviewed,
had a motion, did you second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
I interviewed her at 8 a.m. and it was 9:30 at night.
Oh, man.
So she was in
That's
the
awesome.
classroom. And then Juliana Perella, again, Hussey School, third grade, University of New Hampshire, and she finished her student teaching at Little Harbor in Portsmouth.
All moved. Second.
Second, all those in favor? Can I just ask why all the grade?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've had, a couple things. One is moving down to kindergarten.
Mhm.
So one third grade teacher is, two others have received other positions and we've accepted their resignations already. Kittery, this year it's Kittery. Sometimes it's York, sometimes it's Wells. This year, two
Kittery.
staff right now from
Okay.
Kittery, one potential more. So that's that. Lauren Nudie, fourth grade, for Lebanon Elementary School. And she graduated from Bates and she is just finishing up, her first year at Brook Charter School in Boston. So
Awesome. So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
and then we have a resignation of Karen Smith, and she's the art teacher at North Berwick Elementary School. She received a position at Berwick Academy.
With incredible sadness and proud of her, but lost to the district. I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
All right. And then Alicia Reynolds, resignation from Hussey School, second grade. She's one of the ones that's going to Kittery.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay. And two resignations that are for your information, but it needs to be no action on these. Ryan Peters, he's an educational technician at MHA, and he is going down to Springfield College to do some further education for himself, but also do some wrestling coaching.
Oh.
And then Nicole Heron, who is an educational technician at Knowlton School, and she's resigning.
Yes, yes. We have, can you roughly, how many
We're
openings?
pretty good. We've got multiple pathways, a science teacher at multiple pathways. We have a first grade position at Lebanon Elementary School. We have a life skills teacher in Berwick. And we will likely have a bus driver, at least one. And then we have a few ed techs, some of these ones that we just read. So about 6 ed techs right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're in pretty good shape.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Josh had asked that we spend talking about the protest or the walkout, to walk out at Noble Middle School prior to the district budget hearing. So do you want to just?
Sure, just, when it was reported out, as we talked on the phone, as I called you just with my questions, I was concerned about that. Number one, it happened that we have students leaving class, without the permission of the teacher, without the permission of admin. And so I was concerned that, okay, so that's happening. I remember I was part of, not part of one, but, experience when, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, unfortunate school event in Florida happened. That caused a number of different walkouts across the nation. And I, being an administrator at that time, I'm going through that. We had a number of high school students who did walk out, and I told Audra the story is that the superintendent called the high school principal and said, every single one of those students have in-school suspension tomorrow with me in the auditorium. And what he did, he spent all day, they had a consequence, obviously, but he spent the day teaching them about proper advocacy and going about the right way. And the students actually came to the school board meeting following that because there was a lot of questions, and students stood up and said how beneficial that action was by the superintendent. And they appreciated his direct involvement in that particular issue. So I'm concerned because, our country has a lot of polarizing issues. We've seen it. We've heard about it, we've talked about and alluded to it. My concern is that if it happened with this, what's next? And are we going to continue to just, as a school district, say, hey, you just can't do that? Or do we have severe consequences for when kids leave an instructional environment? And I understand the second one was during a I'm misquoting, but it's like, and not, I'm not saying enrichment time or intervention time, whatever it is. My feeling is when the students arrive, that instructional minute starts until the bell rings at the end of the day, and every single minute is just as important as another. I would advocate for that and say there are no less important minutes in a school day. And so leaving at any structured time is a big problem and a big disruption. So I'm curious as to, and I'm also aware that it happened 2 days. It happened one day, and we would think that the intervention in our protocols, as far as teaching students what's proper, that would ensure that it would not happen the second time. But my understanding, it did happen the second time, and I'm wondering what steps did our district take?
Concerned it was both of them are at the middle school, right? So I'm like, I would think that would be over more of a high school thing. So I'm a little puzzled by that.
Sure, there was I think, so one of the things is that in one of the classes, not a social studies or science or literacy class, there was discussion about the district budget. And it was a very good, robust discussion with the students. But as part of that discussion, they talked a little bit about, some of the positions that were cut. So that was the motivation for the students at that time. So that's where it came out. That wasn't a discussion up here like it was down at the middle school for that. And yes, that first day, students did walk out of class, and they, as protocol, when students walked out of class, they were marked absent. The school contacted parents right away and let parents know what was happening. And some parents said, have my child go back in. And so that's what happened. Officer Fogg was out there, Melinda Luters, the assistant principal, Mike Archambault, the principal, was out there. And then, so that was that day. The next day, once there was a likelihood or a probability that it was going to happen again, we worked to think about student safety and manage that potential for that to happen. And it did occur again at the very end of the day, the last block of the day, which wasn't an academic block. And Josh, I don't disagree with you that every minute counts, every second counts. I don't disagree with that at all. And as you know, we've had a situation at the high school over the last couple of years where we did have a pretty big walkout. And again, the biggest part for us is trying to keep students as safe as we possibly can and facilitate that safety for them. And that's what happened at the middle school as well that day. And it hasn't happened since. So, but I understand your point about the consequence per se. I hear that. I also think about what lessons that did teach our students. And so I guess I hear both sides of that. Absolutely.
So do we think it's appropriate for the school budget to have been discussed at that level? How could you possibly, in one class session, explain that budget in a meaningful way?
Well, I mean, the reality of it is that the conversations were happening in people's homes and in their classrooms, and I mean, not in their classrooms, but in people's homes. And it probably got brought up in school. I don't think I think probably the teacher was just responding to that. I don't think anybody started a conversation.
Okay, so I thought that was.
Yeah, no, I'm sure this was talking because kids are they're listening, right? They're listening to what's happening.
So if in that discussion, they're talking about teachers that are being removed. I mean, that was specifically said just now, that was brought up. I'm not understanding how we go from, we're talking about the budget and to specific things that are being brought up that work the kids up like that. I think that wasn't given in context of what the budget was doing. That wasn't like that.
If you watch the video though, like if you're watching the recordings, you know what's being cut.
Yeah.
So those were the conversations.
Yeah, I went home and had conversations with kids about themselves.
Discussions are we taking one side or another on that? Are we bringing something in that really should be discussed with the homes? Are we allowing a teacher to go that direction? And I don't know what class it was in, but I'm really concerned about
what I'm trying to say, I think, is not that a teacher had a conversation in a classroom and instigated themselves. I think the students came in asking questions and the teacher responded to those questions. And the
Have we
information is
spoken
out
to the
there.
teacher about that?
I have not personally.
So we
no,
can't
I'm not.
say yes or no that happened. Is that right?
Nope, I can't say yes or no that
I
happened.
think my just general opinion is yes, the one event I'm not a fan of because our most important thing is to A, keep kids safe and B, and make sure that they're instructed. And if they have questions about the budget, then absolutely, then let's design a lesson around that rather than address it that day, right? First say, hey, mom and dad, but I'm though this issue is what prompted this, I'm much more interested in what are we doing going forward? Like, how do we see this playing out? I mean, just think about November's election, how polarized our country right now. Like, I think we're crazy if we're sitting here as a board thinking that there's not going to be any issues whatsoever after the election on November. Like how, what is our plan? What is our communication system?
Yes.
Look at all that and start saying, okay, so what does the future look like? And are we going to become a school system? Like, I mean, we have school systems around our area that students walk out on a regular basis and it's, for whatever reason, accepted by their community. I'm not in that spot, not amongst our students who can't vote. I'm not there yet, right? That's my opinion though, but I'm interested in the whole board.
So clarifying question, are you asking how we safely empower students to stand up for what they believe in? Or are you saying like, we just don't tolerate this at all?
I think when they can't vote, certainly I'm interested, like they have opinions. That's why they're in school. I'm my classroom, we talk about lots of things and I'm a math teacher, right? So, but I'm always like, the kids don't know where I stand, right? They have no idea. And I say, well, what are the facts that we know? That sounds like an opinion, right? How do I know it's an opinion? Well, when I'm teaching about that, that's all I'm doing. And if we're doing that, then we're not advocating for anything, right? We're advocating for a conversation and we're advocating for them to educate themselves and have that conversation at home. But it just like, how do we express ourselves as a community? Do we express ourselves by just saying, you know what, I'm upset, I'm walking out? Or do we ask the questions, sit down at the table and have the conversation in a meaningful manner? That's what I'm wondering where we are at.
So I think
Protest is sort of a part of our natural process. So I don't know if the idea that we should scare them with punishments so they don't leave. To me, that's asking for bigger trouble. If you try to repress that, I don't know, you might end up in a worse situation.
Is there a way though that we can offer students the opportunity to express their personal opinions around important issues that are happening in our district and in our country without having them feel that they have to walk out to be heard? Are we giving them opportunities to be heard in other venues?
All good questions.
Every one of our budget meetings was open to anyone.
These are hard.
It's true.
Anyone could come to the microphone and speak.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. And I never, I said this to Audra and I said, I'm unless I skipped out, I never noticed any single student coming to the mic on any one of the nights that we had and we were talking about budget. And we talked about these, we did not introduce anything and make a decision that same night, right? I mean, we went multiple weeks with saying, okay, we're looking at these things. We gave our community, time to kind of understand what we were talking about and come and ask questions and all that stuff. So I think if we're advocating for proper, then we want to say, you should go to those public meetings because that's part of being a citizen is going to those public meetings and stating your concerns, not just walking out. You know what I mean?
My 8-year-old's not going to stay here till 10:30 at night at a public meeting and discuss the budget. So they might have watched the recordings. We have to remember that too.
I also think
8-year-old walks out of a classroom, consequences are there. Whether it's talking to the principal or.
I don't know.
whatever, it's walking out of a class.
No, Donna Martin graduates. So he took over.
Kids accountable every day for walking out of a class without teacher permission. Every day this is happening.
Safely empower them to do these things.
It's not what I'm saying.
And others.
Walk out of a class, there are consequences. Period. Okay? Because we hold kids accountable for this every day. They walk out of a class, they're held accountable, whether it's go to the principal, go to the office, see your guidance counselor, whatever it is, they are held accountable.
is that true for an unexcused absence? Does somebody have to, is there a punishment?
I didn't say unexcused absence, I said leave.
That's really what it is.
If they leave the class,
If they're there for the
What it
day,
is. You're leaving class. That's an unexcused
you
absence.
walk out of a class, is there a
Yes.
consequence is the question.
yes,
Consequences.
yes, and we actually know that. As a board, we know that.
What are
I've
they?
seen it. So I'm not.
I don't know that.
Holds them responsible. I'm saying the administration of the
But that's what I'm asking.
accountable.
What is it that happens? I don't know what happens. If somebody's walks out of the classroom, which is essentially an unexcused absence, what happens to them?
Honestly, there's a range of what happens, depends on what the situation is and why they left the classroom, depends on if there was a disruption, like a
Right.
major disruption. So it's not, there's a level, and if you look at the code of conduct, there's some levels of things. And I think that I think honestly, the crux of the question is the punishment or is the consequence meaty enough? And I think there's differing opinions about what is a meaty consequence.
Well, when we make a
regarding these
conscious decision, and every one of those students made a conscious decision to walk out that day.
things. Mhm.
Nobody forced them.
Mhm.
Nobody
So
forced
the
them.
consequences were delivered, and then from there.
Right, what were the consequences?
So they were marked absent, and that goes down, and their parents were called.
Which is what would happen.
So that's a first offense, am I correct?
Yeah, and most of these students were probably first offenders in sort of taking that leadership.
What I'm saying is,
role
we
that
didn't,
they
we
were
didn't hear the consequences. That's all I'm saying. I think that's what
Okay.
we're saying. There should have been consequences. And if you're saying that there were, then that's fine. That's,
And were consequences escalated the second day if they did it the second?
if they did it the second time, did we escalate to number two?
Is that typical? Is that
That's-
typical of our conduct code? If students do the same thing another time, does their consequence escalate or is it not?
Depends on the frequency.
Right.
And it's a
I'm asking. I'm asking a general.
I shared it with, I just shared it with Josh earlier today, so yeah.
I'm kind of troubled though that we want to have this, for somebody who's acting out and leaves the classroom because they're going to go vape in the bathroom. Okay, consequences. But I don't think we should punish our students who are exercising their rights as citizens to speak their voice.
If you leave a classroom, there are consequences. Now, they could have chosen to do it before school. They could have chosen to do it after school. No consequences would have been there. But they walked out of a class, whether it's to vape or go out and cause a major, I know they got a consequence. But what I'm saying is there's no difference. Really, there's no difference.
And that's how they were addressed.
But they had opportunities to plan it before school or after school.
So are you suggesting they should
Is not appropriate.
more so?
Say that again. I didn't.
I didn't hear what you
Are you,
said.
I'm confused because they did have the consequence that,
No.
are you saying they need more than that?
No. I said,
I guess.
so the child, no, I'm answering, Kathleen's, objection or statement.
Well, it's just, sorry.
That
Yeah.
that
Agree.
going to vape, that's a consequence times two. Because first of all, that would be to leaving a classroom and then vaping in the classroom, whether it be, not classroom, bathroom or wherever they go. Okay, that's two consequences. That's a difference, that's a little different, but leaving the classroom, whether it be to go vape or to go outside and protest, is still leaving the classroom, which is not something that's allowed. It's really not something they should be doing because it does put a student in danger, whether it's either thing. The safety doesn't start when they're outside and we realize what they're doing. It starts with the classroom. Where are they going? What are they doing? And this was numerous kids. All I'm saying is it's not, the judgment is the same because they're both leaving the classroom without permission. And you have to take that for what it is. Now, the vaping is a whole different story. That's why it's differently handled. But walking out of the classroom is walking out of the classroom. We need to hold our students accountable for what they do, whether it be something wonderful or something that really they shouldn't be doing. Because like you said, it's unsafe for them to be doing this.
And we did.
Yes.
And you did, that's what
did.
I'm saying. But they put themselves in a position that was unsafe, but they walked out of the classroom.
think,
That caused all kinds of stuff to happen.
Mhm.
People, staff had to be outside with them when they should have been doing what they should have been doing inside or wherever.
I do like that the consequence that you.
They had the consequences. I get the consequences. I'm sorry, I can't see it really, so.
No, I do like the consequence you talked about, Josh. It was a teachable moment. It was a civic lesson that the principal delivered after the students walked out, breaking basically what is in the student handbook. So I could applaud that teachable moment, but I want to be careful about
Well, part of that teaching is that peaceful protest is something we allow. in
Is
this country,
something that
so
is the
I-
foundation in our country.
Yeah.
Right, and I think to that point, I mean, as I said, the students received a day of in-school suspension. That was the consequence, right? It wasn't a phone call home. It was, you cannot leave your class. We do not allow that as a school system, but we applaud that you're passionate about something. So let's teach you how to properly go through the proper channels, right? And have these conversations. I wonder, and I'm talking specific, but I want to get more general. Did these students ask to meet with the principal of the building to discuss this? No?
They wouldn't know that, Josh. You're right.
So let's give them the consequence, the extended consequence that would allow us to spend the time to teach them, right? And I think that's what I'm advocating for. Because if we don't actually give a severe enough consequence that aligns with a lesson that actually addresses the issue, we can just see this perpetuating forward and forward and forward. It's not, to me, it's not about, was it a in-school suspension, out-school suspension, detentions? It's not all about that, but where was the block of time to educate students who are passionate about it? And are we purposeful about that as a district? I think that's important. Right? And then the other thing is we have to, I'm also mindful that these students are below the age of 18. The responsibility is with their mom and dad, not with them, right? They're supposed to talk to their parents and their parents are to do that role. That's the role of a family, right? So, do we as a school board just permit kids to just act out any way they want? And I think that's an important question for us. I think that's what's important for us to talk about. Do we see it as our role to say, hey, it's your right, you can do anything you want? Or do we say it's your right to talk to your parents openly and honestly and ask the right questions? And for us to advocate for our educational community here, because it is a disruption. Now I'll give you an example, right? So this happened to me when I was teaching at Somersworth, right? Is that the students had a walkout at the end of the day. It was actually fourth block. We have 80-minute blocks. They walked out in the last half minute. I was giving a quiz at the last half minute. So what happens if a student skips my class and I give a quiz? Are they allowed to make that up? No, it's a 0. Well, now I have parents who are really upset. My child is advocating for something really important. And you just give a quiz when they're gone? Well, that was in my lesson plan. That was my plan. And the kids made choice. Like, we're putting our faculty in a difficult position. I think there's a lot going on here that we have to acknowledge that there's a lot more to it than just, feeling passionate and making a decision. We don't have to discuss it all tonight. I just wanted to bring it up and understand that this is bigger and maybe it's an encouragement to have our superintendent, assistant superintendent talk about it in the admin team and kind of come up with guidelines for our district if that's the way we want to do it, or if we think this discussion was enough. I don't know.
I just want to add to what you said, and this is just to add to it literally, but I think we do have to remember that not all students have high functioning families that they're going home to discuss these things. So keeping it in whatever fashion it's done, still having the school as a place that it's available to be discussed, because sometimes that's the only place some of these kids have people that they can have this conversation with.
But apparently, add to that though, this had to come from parents because it wasn't initiated by the teacher. So
But also,
came into the school from home.
sorry, I can't see your I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to say, there was a teacher speaking to the kids who didn't give them the option to go speak to somebody. They were answering questions, but they didn't give them the option of principal.
We actually don't
somebody
know.
else. We don't know, but I'm saying,
We don't know.
it's kind of a question more than it
So
is.
I'd say leave the hypotheticals out unless we actually want to
Right.
charge our assistant superintendent to do an investigation on that.
No, I'm just saying that might be something that we could encourage when they have questions that, maybe they should go ask somebody who might know more information. Not protest necessarily.
Well, maybe we should, a code of conduct review might be in order for everything.
That would be great.
And
Yeah, actually, it's on the agenda for next fall.
There we go.
It's time, right? We try to do it biannually, so
Right.
it's on the list. Yep.
But the students that did it, now, my question, was there any repeat students that went out both days?
There were, and parents were notified both days,
Yeah.
and they were marked absent from that class both days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Yep. And I think
But you do have to remember that they're under 18. So technically they're minors and technically, there are some limits because of that. Anything else? To be reviewed in the fall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in terms of the code of conduct for sure. Yep.
Right.
Anything else?
When do we review the code of conduct?
So, we'll start, so typically we do it like biannually, and so this is the year that it's coming up, so we're gonna do it in the fall, probably October.
I just want to do we review it before it's printed and handed off to students? Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of
So
weird
it's
to
in the-
review
it's
it and then
already
hand it
in the-
out.
So it's already like set to be, it's the MSAD 61, so we're gonna need to like look at it again, and if we need to update it and change it, we'll change it. The nice thing about handbooks these days is they're all electronic and be changed pretty easily. So, but this will give us time to really look through it with, so typically there's a committee of administrators and board members who join and look at it over and try to.
I'd love to be on that.
Yeah, I think I signed you up already. I sent you an email with it, and I'm pretty sure I said, yeah, and I've already got you on the.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah, Nancy usually does it. I don't know if we're gonna suck her in this year or not, but.
Determined.
Yeah.
Okay, public input.
There are just two,
Oh,
one more
sorry,
thing.
I'm sorry.
No, we just need to set the dates for our summer. We
Oh.
typically have a workshop with Drummond and Woodsum.
July, you want one in July and one in August?
Yes.
Have any recommended dates?
We can stick with like, if we wanted to do the third Thursday in July, we could do that, and then the third in August, or we could try to piggyback them off like the July 11th budget hearing.
That's what I was thinking. Avoid having more than.
Yeah.
So if the hearing's on the 11th, you say we should meet on the 18th, the next week?
No, we
or
could meet the
before?
11th.
We do it, yeah.
We could
all the same
before
day.
the budget hearing.
So do it in the afternoon as
Right.
opposed to at night.
Yes,
That works for me.
since
I don't know what
that's,
it works for. others.
okay.
Depends on you guys.
Wait, can everybody do that earlier time on that night, right? The budget hearing would be what,
6:30.
6:30, so
So we did like a 4 o'clock-ish, or,
that's something that can be made.
yeah, and Jerry, is that doable for you?
Yeah.
I'll just watch it.
Does that work for people?
you.
July 11th, 4 o'clock?
On the 18th.
On the 18th? Oh, I thought it was.
On the 11th.
Sorry, I meant the 11th. I apologize. July 11th.
From here.
Okay.
So the budget hearing is at 6:30
Right, so
and the
Do it at 4.
4,
okay.
and then the August one,
The 15th?
we could do the 15th. And then we'll start September with our first
Right.
Thursday.
Do you want to do night on the 15th? Or what time? Thursday, so.
Right. Do you just want to stick to the regular 7 o'clock time?
Fine with me. The rest of us.
Okay, 7 o'clock,
4 o'clock? I mean,
August
7th.
7 o'clock on the 15th.
Right.
Okay, we'll get those out tomorrow. We'll send those dates out. Just-
So the 4 PM on July 11th is with Drummond and with
Yes, that's our
executive session.
workshop.
Okay.
And then if the budget does not pass, we'll have the budget hearing that evening at 6:30. And then August 15th will be a regular 7 PM start meeting. And then September will start the 1st and the 3rd, the
So-
2 meetings a month.
September 5th and 19th.
Yes.
Okay.
Would it be helpful for Jen to put it on the calendar already?
Yeah.
Everything on the calendar. Okay.
Okay.
Yep, we'll do that.
So August 15th is just a regular board meeting at
Yes.
7 o'clock?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, were we having a second workshop with Drummond and Woodson? Just that, just
just
that
that
one at 4 o'clock?
Sometimes they
Okay.
come in like periodically, like they did this year,
Okay,
but it won't be that August date unless we need them.
They're coming July.
They'll come the July. That's what we'll aim for at 4 o'clock.
Hopefully, we'll have, you have to get in touch with them to
Yes,
finalize.
yes, yeah. We'll call them tomorrow to see if they can come in. So, okay.
All right, that's it. Okay, now we'll go to public input. Does anyone have any public input? Okay, wait a minute.
Do you want me to do it since you're?
Hi, Joe Forte from North Berwick. I wasn't planning on saying anything, but the talk of the walkout came up. I have a kid in the middle school, and honestly, I didn't see that coming. But it was pretty easy to explain what was happening and why everyone was so concerned. It was that there was some really good teachers who were going to lose their jobs because of budget cuts. I mean, that's true, right? It's more complex than all that, but that fact was true. So when my daughter asked me to explain what was going on, I said, well, you know, this part's true. And she and her friends were really upset about that. And some other kids who she didn't even know. They love their teachers. They love their schools. And they wanted to stand up. And so I know as a parent, I explained that this is pretty serious. You know, there could be a serious consequence for this. I don't know what it's going to be. You could be suspended. I mean, I don't know, you know. She was like, should I do this? And I said, oh, I don't know. Gosh, I mean, you know, I really wanted to leave that up to her. And I think other parents did that too and said, you know, there could be a really serious consequence. Knowing that, I trust the educators of this district. I knew that no matter what, she was going to be safe. Just as Audra emphasized the safety there over and over again. I knew that those who work at the middle school were going to make sure that they had a safe space to do what it is that they wanted to do, whatever they chose to do to make their voices heard. And the way that it went off, I think the school did a great job. I mean, I was notified immediately of what happened, or any parents who were involved were notified immediately of what happened. I know my daughter also has a way of communicating with me via a smartwatch, so a lot of kids have that too. And so when it came to safety, I mean, we would have been right over there if there was a real concern for safety. But I don't know, I thought the school handled it very well. I thought they understood the gravity of it. They understood that there could have been very serious consequences. So I don't think there was a temptation to have it keep going. I think they understood that if it was done again, it was going to be very, very serious going forward. So I do think they felt empowered. They felt safe. I think they learned a lot in the process. I think a lot of them learned about what was happening with the budget because a lot of them, I think, didn't really know what was going on to begin with. Some of them were blowing it out of proportion, so it was a good way for them to learn what was really happening. Yeah, no, I thought that the middle school handled it well. I thought the district handled it well. They had a safe space for it. I don't see it becoming a problem in the future. And so, you know, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Sean Works, North Berwick. Just wanted to talk about the displaying of when meetings are. Thank you for posting that on the main website. I think people have kind of become accustomed to seeing it there. And so there's some confusion. And I realize the board does have executive sessions. And so there's some questions of, is this one that the public is invited to or allowed to or not? And I think there was some confusion around that. And just, I would say, if we could have that, and I realize, I also understand this is not a, like, oh, there's nothing going on. This is your busiest time of year. You've got the budget, you've got graduation, all of that. I understand where things may slip through. Just making some extra effort to make sure that if you kind of train people to look in a certain spot, that you keep that updated, and making sure that that information is there. So people, when you start to gravitate to that, up until I believe today, there was no mention of the meetings. So there's some question of like, okay, do we attend? Do we not attend? Can we attend? Can we not? I don't want to try to come into a meeting that the public isn't allowed to by accident. We all have very busy schedules. And so just kind of making sure that we can plan to attend, because, you know, having started to attend this, I want to make sure that I'm involved. So just doing that. The other, request I have, it does make mention of the district calendar on the school board page itself. I can't for the life of me find that. So just making that a little bit more accessible. And
See you listening a second? Okay. No, it's okay. So I'll do that.
Yeah, but doing, you know, doing that, I think would also be a huge benefit. So thank you all very much. And thank you to the person back there that I won't name, but
It's all right, I did.
executive session on the ones that are executive
Yes.
session. So
Yeah.
I don't know
Yes.
if you want to add no public allowed.
So-
Welcome,
Right.
ones that are, you know. what I mean?
And also they usually got here, they're.
Right.
Yeah, and again, like anything like that I think would be extremely helpful to give just cues to folks.
Mhm.
Some of the other things like, I know we have like newsletters for in North Berwick. I think all of those, they sometimes list them and I think it's, again, this is a huge, very busy time of year. I think it just happened to be a group of misses that came up and there was a lot of confusion around it. Glad we got it all figured out and we're all here today. So thank you again all for your hard work.
So just to clarify, our board meetings are the 1st and the 3rd of every single month,
Yes.
except for July and August.
Right.
And then
And
it increases in March when we go through the budget process. We typically have every Thursday night. But yes, your point.
Yeah, and I think.
In June, because we have it this weekend, next week, not this.
Yes.
With this being.
A before B, except.
Summer, like, and, last year, I think people would have picked up on it more because the school year went so long.
Right.
This was school's ending early. How does that put things into play? So I think I totally understand that and just that little bit extra clarity, I think would help out tremendously. So thank you again.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Hi, Kelsey Hewitt, North Berwick. My kid was the one who walked out on first day. It was also during a lunch period. So whether she didn't want to eat lunch, that's up to her, I guess. The second one, there was a designated time by the principal that put that out there. So I guess if there's going to be anything, we should all talk to the principal first and figure out what actually happened that day instead of throwing a bunch of things, because there was a designated time for all of that. And yeah, we encouraged our kid. I will encourage the 2 other ones coming through as well. If they believe in something and they want to get involved in something, then that's what they're going to do. I won't stand in their way and tell them they can't do it. We got the phone call and we're like, yeah, okay, have fun. She texted us and goes, I'm outside. And she was so proud of herself. But again, we're not going to stand in there and tell her she can't do something if she believes in something that she wants to do. And a lot of these things affect her a lot. So, yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
To make a motion to go into executive session, not to adjourn, right?
Oh, that's right. Right.
I make a motion to go into executive session 1 MRSA 4056A evaluation.
You're
please.
good.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you for coming, everybody.
For the public, no more. We're all done. We're going to adjourn right after this, so you don't have to worry about coming back.
Thank you.
Thank you. No more public business.